and this is a new YouTube channel called Meaning, Motivation, Methods, and Madness. The point of this channel is to provide some entertainment, but also some guidance, some practical wisdom, some insight, some guardrails. I would like to be a mentor, a voice of experience, help people avoid some of the pitfalls that got me during my 58 years of life. I know what you're thinking. I look too young and handsome to be 58, but it's true. It's true. So I could have definitely used some mentorship when I was growing up in the 1970s in Detroit, Michigan. I did not get a lot of guidance, and I had to figure a lot of stuff out in my life through trial and error. Lots of error. I know that happens to a lot of people, but I would have at least liked to have had the chance of somebody telling me what not to do and then screwing up and having them say, "I told you so." Nobody got to say, "I told you so" to me because nobody told me so. I'd like to think I would have used some of the good advice, and so I'd like to offer some to my viewers, the dozens and dozens of you out there. I grew up with mom, single parent, divorced from my dad. I was the only child. It was just me and her, and she was drug involved and an alcoholic and bitter and depressed. She was a ball of sunshine, I think it's fair to say. And I didn't get a lot of guidance growing up there because, by age 9, I was the most competent, well-adjusted person in the house. Around age 5, I did start seeing my father. That was about the time that he finally went to court for visitation. I'm told that it was his second wife that prompted him to do that. I don't know. I'd like to think it was because without me, his life was so empty that he ponied up the money for the lawyers. But he got the visitation, so every other weekend and for 1 month in the summer, I did get to spend some time in a nice suburban home outside of Detroit. And my dad did provide me a role model for a ordinary but good life. And I appreciate that. The thing about it was a very kind of passive, indirect role modeling. It's sort of like show and tell. There was show, but there was no tell. There was no, "Hey son, you see this fairly nice house out in the suburbs? I got this by doing this, this, and this, and not doing that, and that." I didn't get that. There's an old saying that if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. I got fish, breadsticks mostly, but I did not get the fishing lessons. I know a lot of people had it worse than I did. A lot of people were in predicaments that were worse than mine. I like the word predicament. But I did pay a price for the lack of guidance that I got. I think that if you're a parent, it's your job to mentor your kids, to lead your kids, to provide them with experiences to build up their character, to give them a roadmap for the world they're going to be stepping off into. I'd say I lost at least a half a decade just learning to be competent and functional on my own. And probably at least another decade after that, having the confidence and clarity to meet my potential. And like I said, there was a lot of pitfalls that I landed in that maybe I didn't need to. Let me give you an example of the kind of guidance that would have been nice. So my dad married my mom when they were young, and she divorced him, kept his kid, turned out to be unbalanced and dysfunctional. Later on, he married his second wife and seemed to have a decent marriage. So you'd think at some point he might want to take me under his wing and say, "Hey, let me give you some pointers here. In relationships, do this, don't do that. And if she does that, you get out of there. You get out of Dodge, because that's a big red flag." I never got that. Put a roof over my head and food on the table every other weekend and a month out of the summer. But when it came to mentoring me, preparing me, guiding me, he kind of punted on first down. I didn't get that advice about those red flags. I kind of put women on a pedestal, because the whole romantic adventure novel thing, damsels in distress, that kind of thing. So growing up, I had a really high opinion of women. I put them on a pedestal. I thought a woman's love would be like redeeming, and it would be the key to a happy life. Sorry. Not so much. I mean, I love women. There's nothing wrong with women, but it's crazy to put them on a pedestal. 3 reasons. 1, they are just as messed up as men are, but in different and interesting ways. 2, this is the most important one. For every 1 that could make your life better, there's 10 that could make it worse. Those are not odds to play with if you don't know what you're doing. And the 3rd thing is, having a woman doesn't really improve you as a human being. If you're a miserable screw-up when you're single, you'll still be a miserable screw-up when you have a woman in your life. But you'll be with a woman who goes for miserable screw-ups. So I'm not sure that's a net positive. Anyway, I did come out okay. By any rational measure, I've had a successful life. I made it to the top 10% income-wise. I've been a leader of an organization. I've gotten national recognition. So I did make it. But I was kind of like that old video game, the old school video game Frogger, where you jump across the logs and through the traffic. I made it, but I probably came pretty close to getting squished on more than one occasion. And I would like to help other people avoid that. I would like to provide some warnings. It would be a privilege if I could help just one person avoid the quicksand that I stepped into. I want to help wayward souls who, like me, were let loose in the world without much in the way of guidance. I especially want to help those that were misguided or misled. They were took, they were bamboozled, they were led astray, they were allowed to run amok. Not their fault. Somebody should have told them stuff. So that is what I would really like to do. Unfortunately, there's been I'd say an unfulfilled need for mentorship going back decades. I think at some point, I don't know, people just became afraid to stand up and show some leadership. Not me. I figure, what do I got to lose? I'm retired. They can't fire me. It's not just that people need mentorship. It's that the need is greater than it's ever been. As I have slowly built myself up over the decades, the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and now 2020s, as I have gotten a little bit more put together, a little bit more organized, a little bit more capable, society around me has gotten dumber and weaker and more pathetic by the decade. It's scary. In the 1970s, say when I graduated or when I was in high school around the 78 or so, if you compared me as far as my mental toughness, my awareness, my competence to the average adult male, remember, the greatest generation was still alive back then. It would be like comparing Pee Wee Herman to G.I. Joe. I was not much. But now, in 2021, now the greatest generation is gone. We got millennials, we got Generation X, we got Generation Y. I'm not Pee Wee Herman anymore. I'm frickin' Clint Eastwood compared to a bunch of SpongeBob SquarePants. It's scary. Now, I don't say this to be mean to people. Young people, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Leadership for the past 4 decades, has sucked. You've been misled, led astray. The elite, politics, social media, big business, they've led you down the wrong path.
Oh, I say it again. You've been had. You've been took. You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run on.
It's not your fault, but I'd like to help. I really would. I feel like the whole country is like teetering on the edge of that movie Idiocracy. Let's all join together. You guys are my peeps, my dogs, my homies. Let's all join together and pull back from the ledge. Okay, so now you know who I am, or at least my persona, and you know what I want to do, what I want to accomplish. Let me talk a little bit about my bias, my perspective, my frame. Obviously, I'm not a child of the 21st century. I'm a 20th century guy. And a lot of you might think that disqualifies me, but look at it this way. I've lived through your time, and I've lived through my time. If you're young, you've only lived through your time. You got nothing to compare it to. I see the whole thing, the big picture. And because of that, I am a cynical idealist. I'm telling you this stuff up front. You should always be suspicious and skeptical of people who don't tell you what their bias is. They should start off their conversation with, well, this is the direction I'm coming from. Cynical idealist. Now, those might seem like a contradiction in terms, and they kind of are, but the universe is not a one-dimensional place. Things can be made of many things. And there's a lot of things, say buildings, dams, all kinds of structures. They are comprised of opposing forces, and the two opposing forces create stability. So my cynicism keeps me from being stupid, and my idealism inspires me to try for more. A cynical idealist. Let's go with the cynicism first. Cynics believe that people operate primarily based on self-interest. They have selfish motives, not necessarily honorable, selfless motives. Okay, and I believe that is mostly true. And I see it every day. So the thing is, we want to avoid pain and get pleasure. We want to please ourselves. We want to be happy. But it's hard because there's a lot of inherent contradictions. Back in the day, our ancestors, 8,000 years ago on the plains of Africa, life was pretty simple. Pleasure, get food, get shelter. Pain, avoid getting eaten, avoid starving. And that worked really well in these small little hunter-gatherer groups that were all cohesive. But in the modern age, it's hard. There's a lot of things in today's time that feel good now. They bring us pleasure in the short run, but they destroy us in the long run. Drugs, seeking popularity, being narcissistic. Then there's other things that are painful in the short run, but they can make us feel really good in the long term. Like being disciplined and honorable and putting in the hard work, being honest with yourself, having a little bit of courage. It kind of sucks in the beginning, but it pays off in the end. So it's confusing. There's so many contradictions. I'm trying for pleasure, but it's going to give me pain. And if I want pleasure in the long run, I have to suck it up and endure some pain now. Another contradiction is that not only do we want to feel good, but we want to feel good about ourselves. The reason why that's a contradiction is because a lot of stuff that feels really good later is going to make us feel like shit about ourselves. We'll look back and we'll say, yeah, I was having a great time then, but my God, what an idiot I was. And I'm going to feel bad at myself because of all the stupid things I did when I was chasing pleasure. It's ironic because the things that, again, will make us happy in the long run are very challenging and difficult and painful up front. So what do we do? What do we do? We want to feel good about ourselves while we chase these empty pleasures. We cheat. That's right, we cheat. We tell ourselves stories. We do useless and destructive things that superficially we think benefit others. Like, we had this big crusade about getting rid of plastic bags, all the while we ignore practical stuff that needs fixing. Oh, let's get rid of plastic straws. Never mind the termites eating the foundation of our house, which is about to fall on our head, because who cares about that stuff? We want to feel good about ourselves, so we embrace aesthetics. We embrace symbolism. We embrace stories. We live in these storylands inside our minds where we're some kind of hero. But we don't do anything hero-worthy. We don't even do anything helpful for others sometimes. We don't give blood at the local hospital. We don't tutor some kid in a failing school. But we'll get out there with signs and we'll protest some war on another continent that we don't even know about. So we just have this talent. We're doing useless things to feel good about ourselves. So that's cynical Brian. Cynical Brian does not have a super high opinion of the human race because it's tragic. It's not tragic that we're selfish. It's tragic that we're so bad at being selfish. You would think that if you were selfish, you would be happy. But we're stupidly selfish. We're selfish in delusional and cowardly ways because we won't put in the work to do things that will really make us feel good. So we're selfish, but we're also miserable screw-ups at the same time. We're not good at being selfish. If you were good at being selfish, you'd be happy and productive. But this is where idealistic Brian comes in. Idealistic Brian. Because at the same time, I think that we are selfish, delusional, stupid screw-ups. I also believe we are capable of doing and being great. Okay? I love humanity. I don't hate us. I love us. Because every flaw that's in you is in me. And if you can overcome your flaws and I can overcome my flaws, then together that really means something. Okay? It's an uphill battle for us to be wise and responsible. The struggle is real, but the struggle is worth it. We'll always be selfish, but we can find ways to be selfish in more intelligent ways that align with others. We can be selfish in ways that are beneficial to the world, to create a win-win. Like, I selfishly strive to be honorable. Why? Because when I'm honorable, I like myself more. I respect myself more. We can rise above our petty nature. We're just these foolish, sometimes vicious, clueless, neurotic animals. But sometimes we can rise above that and do wonderful things and create moments of transcendental beauty. And that's what we should do, because we can. It's hard. The thing is, we have to be willing to aim low. We have to be willing to get off our high horse. See, gems, diamonds, rubies, emeralds, they don't fall from heaven. We dig them out of the earth. We scrape them from the rocks. We cut, we polish them, we put the work into them till they glisten and shine and show beauty. For us to be our best selves, we have to, metaphorically speaking, be willing to dig in the dirt and scrape and put in some work. But we can do it. So this channel is going to spend half its time confronting our frailties, our foibles, that's a cool word, foibles, and screw-ups, but at the same time encourage us to reach our potential, to show how we can do that. There's this Eagles song, the rock group, the greatest rock group in the history of the world, the one that sold the most records in the 20th century, beating out Michael Jackson. That group. This song, this Eagles song, has these lyrics. Well, I know it wasn't you who held me down. Heaven knows it wasn't you who set me free. So oftentimes it happens We live our lives in chains, and we never even know we have the key. That's the essence of this channel. We spend half our lives chaining ourselves down and half our lives looking for the key. I want to help people take responsibility for their chains, help them find their keys to unshackle themselves. Hey, dumbass, why do you believe that? That don't even make any sense. Did you even think about that? Why are you so stupid? Why are you hurting yourself? What are you wrapping those chains around you for? Be like, hey, buddy. Hey, Maze Runner. You know, like in the movie, Maze Runner. Hey, I got you, buddy. I know where the tripwires are. I know where the booby traps are. You know, the walls that will squish you like rotten fruit. I know where those things are. Let me give you some pointers, right? I know where some shortcuts are. Okay? You're going to have to figure a lot of this stuff out yourself, though, because I can't carry you. But there's a lot of people that have gotten out of the maze, and there's people with you who are trying to get out. You can do this, right? And you know those chains on your leg? You have the key. You can unlock those. Where's the key? Maybe it's in your shoe. But these are metaphorical chains. So the key is probably in your mind. As En Vogue once said, for smoking hot ladies, especially in that video with the red dresses, you know what I mean. As En Vogue once said, free your mind and the rest will follow. So, the title of this channel, meaning, motivation, methods, and madness. I'm going to explain how each one of those components can be a chain or it can be a key if we approach it the right way. And that's what the rest of this is about. Chains and keys. Chains and keys, people. Chains and keys. Let's go on to part 2. Meaning, motivation, methods, and madness. There's all sorts of ways that we can improve ourselves and our situations, keeping those 4 things in mind. We just have to be willing to aim low and be humble. And we can make a difference in our life. But let's take them in reverse order. Let's start with madness. What do I mean by madness? Well, first, let me give you a disclaimer as I talk about meanings, motivation, methods, and madness. These are not technical terms. I'm not coming at this like some kind of academic, okay? So, you know, when I talk about madness, I'm not talking about like Sigmund Freud's theories, right? Because he was a freak, right? If I talk about meaning, it's not like I'm, you know, quoting Nietzsche or Kierkegaard or something, you know. Screw those guys with their funny names. If I talk about the universe, I'm not coming at it like a physicist, right? I'm not like Stephen Hawking's, right? I'm not rolling like he rolls with his black holes and all that kind of stuff. Black holes. Okay, back on track. So let's start with madness. What do I mean by madness? Madness is all the random stupidity, the unfairness, the viciousness that we encounter. And sometimes it comes from us. Sometimes it's within us. The madness can be within us. The madness can be in the people around us. Or it can be in the universe. Now, I know the universe is not a sentient being that's doing stuff out of malice, okay? But it doesn't need to be, all right? You can die in a heat wave or a hurricane or an earthquake without the universe even knowing you exist. So, yeah, the universe can be nasty and vicious. Take my word for it. Anyway, madness means that there's always the potential for things to go very, very wrong. Doesn't mean they will, but it means they can. You are just one impulsive decision away from turning your life into a train wreck. You are one drunk driver away from having your whole life turned upside down. Your dog is one bat bite away from becoming Cujo. If you don't know, look on YouTube. Cujo. Bad. Okay? All sorts of terrible things can happen. So we need to be aware of the madness, especially inside ourselves. We need to study it. We need to see its patterns. We need to prepare ourselves. The madness is like chains that hold us down, that hold us back. But if we can endure it, if we can prepare for it, if we can overcome it, we become strengthened. And the madness of the world can not only strengthen you, but it can create opportunities. You can be the guy with the hardware store after the hurricane. So, in a way, coping with the madness is a key. Chains and keys, people. Chains and keys. All right. Next is methods. Methods is pretty straightforward. It's your strategies and tactics for fulfilling a purpose. Okay? And, of course, bad methods are chains. Life is a feedback machine that tries to teach us what works and what doesn't work. And when you ignore that feedback and you constantly use strategies and tactics that don't work because you're stubborn or clueless, that's chains. That's rusty chains, like heavy rusty chains that make like a nasty rash. You don't want that, okay? But if you let life teach you what doesn't work, you can also figure out what does work. And figuring out what works and stop doing what doesn't work, that's the key. That's the master key, baby. Stop doing what doesn't work. We'll talk more about this another time. Motivation. Okay, so motivation is kind of like your purpose, but I want it with the alliteration, methods, madness, motivation, meaning. I like the M's. I was sticking with the M's, but it's kind of interchangeable, right? Your purpose provides you motivation. Motivation keeps you on your purpose. So if you are motivated, that propels you. But if you're motivated in the wrong way, that's not so good. If your motivation is based on something frivolous like popularity, it's like trying to build a house on a foundation of sand. Or if your motivation is resentment, that's like watering a garden with water from a poison well. Those are chains. A lack of motivation is a change, and bad motivation is a chain. So, the keys are using effective motivations that are wholesome and worthwhile. And having a purpose is super important. Okay, let's go to meaning. Meaning is the most abstract and complicated of the 4 M's, or M&M and M&M, as I sometimes call them. 4 M's. Meaning. That is the social, emotional, and cognitive associations and interpretations we put on things and situations. Meaning is a form of communication and understanding. Sometimes meanings are clear. Where there's smoke, there's fire. If I give you a hug, it means I'm there for you. If there's a long line outside of a restaurant, food's probably pretty good. That's probably what it means. But life can be very tricky, and we can have very incomplete information. Our perceptions, our understanding, it's limited. So we have to connect dots. We have to fill in blanks on our own. It can be a tricky process. We'll use logic to fill in blanks and connect dots, but we'll also use our emotions. We'll use facts, but we'll also use our imagination. We'll use our conscious mind, but also our subconscious mind. Things can get pretty squirrely. And you have to be careful when you construct meaning. Because as powerful as meaning is, because meaning, our ability to construct meaning, that's what sets us aside above the rest of nature. Okay? That's why we inherited the earth, because we can construct meaning. Animals cannot. They can experience things, but they can't construct meaning. Like, that's why we inherited the earth and not the chimpanzees. Isaac Newton, he's sitting in a garden. An apple falls. He figures out that means there's this thing called gravity. Yeah, chimps can't do that. Screw the chimps. They're vicious, nasty creatures. One ate a cat of mine in Cincinnati once. But anyway, meaning. It's the basis of all human culture. All our science, all our religion, all our literature, every single institution has been constructed using our ability as human beings to create meaning. Yay, humanity. The problem is that sometimes we do a bad job of constructing meaning. Sometimes our logic fails, our imagination wasn't right, and it becomes a mess. When you construct meaning in the wrong way, so it does not coincide with reality, bad things happen. It's like a nuclear reactor that overloads. A toxic mess. Remember that time in the 20th century, if you're old enough and not, ignorant, when people thought communism was a good idea? They examined all of human history and they thought, you know what this means? This means communism. That's the ticket, baby. And then 100 million people were murdered by communist dictatorships. Yeah, that interpretation of meaning wasn't right. Or, in the last century, the federal government caused obesity rates to more than double, with a corresponding increase in death by things like heart disease, because they published this health pyramid that turned out to be full of shit. Their big epiphany, I like that word, epiphany, was carbs are healthy. That's right. Eat a lot of bread, a lot of noodles, rice, some sugar. That'll make you skinny. And everybody listened. Yeah, breakfast, don't eat bacon and eggs. No. Cereal, toast, milk, but skim milk. We don't want any fat in you. We don't want you to stay full. We want you to hit the donut tray by 10 o'clock when you get to work. Anyway, there were good intentions with that food pyramid, but it literally killed millions of people because we believed what they thought the data on heart attacks meant, and it turned out to be completely wrong. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is this figuring out meaning stuff is pretty important. It's kind of important that the meaning we derive from our perceptions and the information actually coincides with reality as much as possible. Now, we're not capable of understanding reality perfectly, but we should try to get as close as we can, because when you're out of sync with reality, bad shit happens. Really. We should always try to just construct meaning that coincides with reality and helps us navigate it successfully. As opposed to constructing meaning that doesn't coincide with reality and makes things go down the shitter. Okay, where does meaning come from? Where do we get our meanings? Well, we get a lot of meaning from outside us, our culture, our environment. Growing up, nature and nurture. A lot of meaning is conveyed both ways. I'll just give you a real quick example. Bacon. Who doesn't love bacon? Bacon is the food of the gods. It's like our version of ambrosia. It makes everything good. Who doesn't like bacon? About 1 billion Muslims. They think it's unclean, nasty, disgusting, horrible. From their point of view, it is. So, meaning on something as simple as a hunk of meat, completely different. Your environment kicks in. Like, if you live in the desert Rain probably means something more important to you than if you live in Seattle. Where else do we get our meaning from? Well, we have some factory settings inside our brain. Throughout our evolution as a species, okay, we built up some software in our brains that came with it, designed to help us survive. Things like the ability to acquire language, sexual desire, our ability to laugh. Those are all pre-programmed factory settings. So that's where a lot of our meaning comes from. But don't fret. We are not mindless automatons. We're not blank slates. No, we are human beings. And like the poem says, I am the captain of my soul. I am the master of my fate. I can edit the software I came with. I can create my own programs. I'm not just the computer, I'm the programmer too, y'all. That's right. So we need to always analyze what we've been fed, what we've been programmed, and we need to write a lot of our own programs as well. A lot of self-examination, very important. That's why I don't drink anybody's Kool-Aid, whether it comes to politics, religion, society, or personal drama. I don't drink the Kool-Aid. I am skeptical, all right? Not only don't I drink the Kool-Aid, I don't drink Capri Sun. That is awful. And that Sunny Delight, oh my God, that stuff is nasty. But anyway, back on track. You have to be skeptical, not only of what you've been taught, what you believe, but also the conclusions you've drawn for yourself. Because in addition to all your pre-programming and all we get from society, you are constantly deriving your own meaning from your own experience. And you have to look at some of your conclusions carefully. Okay? Why? I will tell you why. Okay? About 90% of the decisions you make come from your subconscious. Because your conscious mind couldn't handle the burden of making decisions about every tiny little thing and paying attention to every tiny little thing. So neurologically, it makes sense to let your subconscious do a lot of that work. The problem with this, though, is that your subconscious, well, let's just say sometimes it has trouble distinguishing between reality and fantasy. Your subconscious isn't really clear on whether you imagined playing basketball or whether you actually went and played basketball. It's kind of all the same to the subconscious. You have to understand, you made conclusions about important things when you were stoned on drugs. You decided things. You've constructed meaning for yourself when you were confused, lacked critical information, emotionally distraught. You can be a 42-year-old man abiding by meanings you constructed for yourself when you were 9 years old. And not only that, your subconscious, it often reverts back to your factory settings, and it doesn't tell you. It doesn't say, hey, Joe, I've made this decision for you, and I've based it on evolutionary biology, shit that worked for us back in the Paleolithic age. That's what I'm using to make this call now. I just thought I'd let you know. But your subconscious doesn't do that. Nope. So remember, everybody's full of shit sometimes. And everybody means everybody, including ourselves. Not only do we have to be skeptical, not take things on face value, examine motives, examine results. Don't go by the sales pitch, okay? Even with yourself. Like, am I really doing this for what I say I am? Or is there some more stupid reason I'm doing it? There is a whole branch of psychology called cognitive psychology, okay? And that is based on helping people by analyzing how they think, perceive, interpret, and focus on things. It's one way to deal with PTSD, that's post-traumatic stress syndrome. That's another interesting thing, right? Something terrible could have happened to you 15 years ago, but your subconscious mind, if it gets triggered, it'll feed that horrible experience back to you today, 15 years later, like it's fresh bread or something. So you have to go through this whole process of reprogramming your perceptions and dealing with your memories to overcome that. I'm just saying, in all of our minds, there's a lot of shit swirling around. Or as Macbeth said in the play called Macbeth, my head is full of scorpions. I don't know, maybe that's too highbrow. I'm just trying to tell you, not only can't we depend on what our culture tells us, we can't always depend on what we tell us. We have to fight that by being very skeptical and analytical about our beliefs. Because if we believe things in the wrong way, shit goes sideways. Okay? Very important. Anyway, cognitive psychologists, the best psychologists, they agree with me how important it is to curate our library of meaning carefully to get the best results. So, that's the 4 M's. Meaning, motivation, methods, and madness. Those are 4 things that we need to attend to. Because what I'm trying to say here is your life can be just tremendously better or terribly worse, depending on how you manage those things. Say that we went to elementary school together, we were buds, and say we both got straight A's from kindergarten all the way through 6th grade. Those grades are the objective reality. If we choose to construct the meaning that those grades tell us that we're brilliant, that's an honest and plausible way to develop that meaning. Or we could look at those grades and just say, hey, learning is fun. We like learning. We embrace the challenge, and we put in the effort to do the best we can. That is also in alignment with the objective reality of the grades. But they're 2 very different perspectives, 2 different interpretations. And one of those interpretations is toxic, and the other is sustaining. The we got good grades so we're geniuses constructed meaning is very bad, because when we hit college and we have to take an advanced math class and trigonometry kicks our ass, just kicks the hell out of us, and we get really bad grades, that creates an identity crisis that just rocks our world. We're not geniuses anymore. We're bums. We're idiots. We crash and burn. We get triggered by the grade in trigonometry based on that interpretation. If we had the open mindset where we said our good grades just mean that we like learning and we enjoy the challenge of learning, and we get to college and we take that trigonometry class and that class is kicking our ass, but we persevere and we get a C, that doesn't undermine our self-identity, our self-image. Because we know that in learning, you get points for degree of difficulty. And we will have learned a lot, even with that C. And we'll take pride in that. That C will mean more to us than the A we got in anthropology. And that'll sustain us. See, that one tweak in how we view the objective reality of the report card grades can either set us up to be fragile and fall apart when the going gets rough, or set us up to be strong. It's a big deal. So the 4 M's, meaning, motivation, methods, and coping with madness, they all kind of fit together. Each can affect the other. So say I started with meaning. I decided the meaning of school was to learn, not just to get good grades. Then that will lead me to be more persistent, to be more positive, to enjoy the challenge. And when I do that, my motivation is learning, not grades, and I'll become a better problem solver. I'll develop more effective methods. I will gradually see the madness inherent in the education system, where you get people who get really good at taking tests, but don't remember a damn thing that they learned and couldn't problem solve their way out of a paper bag. So those factors all come to bear. Meaning and madness are a little bit more abstract. So maybe we go from abstract to concrete. Maybe we have a friend who is really smart but gets one B and he falls apart and he's like on the ledge because he just can't stand it because his whole self-image crumbled. And we say, oh crap, that's not the meaning I want from my school experience. And then we apply that with our motivation and our methods. Or it could be that we're just going along and we develop some really cool methods that really engage us and inspire us, and that motivates us to learn. And then we see the meaning of learning. They all fit together. But again, your life will be drastically better or drastically worse, depending on how well, how carefully, how accurately you construct reality, your meaning, and ways that are also helpful. How well you develop a purpose, motivation that is wholesome and sustaining. How well you develop methods that actually work. And how well you cope with the madness that you will encounter inside yourself, other people, and the universe. I know after this video I will have dozens and dozens of subscribers. So please subscribe if you like it, and like if you like it, and leave a comment one way or the other. In future videos, I'll dig in more depth regarding each one of these 4 factors: meaning, motivation, methods, and madness.